Hi, I'm Dr. Padilla. Here we talk about all things data visualization, and today we are talking about interactions with Vega-Lite. Now, Vega-Lite really shines in a lot of different aspects, but in particular, it is very good with being able to interactively look at your data. Now, you might want to use interactions to display your visualizations and have your users interact with them, or you might want to use interactions to help you analyze your data sets more. So today we are actually talking about selections, and this will be a sequence of videos on interactions in Vega-Lite. So let's jump in. So here we have a relatively blank observable notebook, and I've already loaded Vega-Lite here, and I've loaded our data set here. So go ahead and pause the video and write down this code to load the Gapminder dataset, which is a very famous dataset that looks at the relationship between population and health metrics for different countries. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and create a very simple plot. So you can code along with me if you like. First, we're going to start with a circle mark. So we'll do VL mark type circle, and we're going to need to render this in the end. If this is all a little foreign to you, check out this video where we walk through the basics of encoding channels and setting up a simple plot in Vega-Lite. Now we're going to add data, and that is going to be the Gapminder dataset that we've loaded in just the chunk above. Next, we want to encode the visualization with various different encoding channels. Okay, so for the X, what we're going to put on the X-axis is going to be income. All right. For the Y-axis, we are going to encode health. In addition, we're going to add a size encoding, and that is going to be for population. And then last thing we'll add here is color. And that is actually going to be nominal. And we're going to specify that based on the region. Now, if I just run that, we have a very simple plot here. What we're seeing is health on the Y, like we specified, income on the X. And we have the various different regions that is in this data set. Now, one thing to note is that because all of these dots are solid colors, there might be some occlusion where different dots are stacked up on top of each other. So we'll also want to add here a opacity. And we're going to specify this to be a fixed value, not based on the data. That's going to be 0.6. All right, so you can see that it got a little more transparent and you can see the dots that are in front or behind the others. Okay, so this is a very simple scatter plot that we have. Now that we have a plot like this, you might be thinking, well, this is interesting, but what if I want to investigate some of these individual points? And that is a great opportunity to add some interaction. So the first types of interaction that we are going to specify are select functions. There's 3 steps that we're going to take. The first is to create a selection instance. The second is to register the selection. And the final one is to apply conditional encoding. This is where we say, based on the selection, here's what we want the visualization to look like when things are and are not selected. The first thing that it includes is const, and that's just basic JavaScript for specifying a constant variable. The next is selection. That is any term that we want to use. That's any word that we want to use to name this function. And this is actually the meat and potatoes of it. It is a select point function that we're going to specify that is in the Vega-Lite language. And what this is going to allow us to do is if a specific one point is selected, then it will allow us to encode the visualization for that point differently than the other points that are being selected here. So the way we're going to start is first what we need to do is actually wrap all of this in curly brackets. And then in order to make the syntax work, now we have to add return here. So if I run this right now, nothing's really going to change. Okay, that's just changing the syntax to make this interaction work. So we're going to go ahead and add that line of code that I just talked about. So we'll add const for constant, and then it's giving us the name. We're going to call it selection. And then the value is going to be that vl.selectPoint, which is down here. That hasn't done anything yet because we've only done step 1, which is to create an instance of a selection. Now we have to register the selection. The way we're going to do that is with this params function here. And this specifies a wide range of different interaction techniques that have been developed in Vega-Lite. Where we're going to add that is here. We're going to add a dot params as in parameters. We're going to specify it as selection as we've created here. So what it's really doing is creating a method to take this selection instance, and it's going to use this code to connect it to the different encoding attributes that we're going to apply. We run this, nothing's going to happen just yet. The last step is applying a conditional encoding. So we need to decide how we want the encoding to change once people have selected an individual point. And we can add this conditional encoding to really any of our encoding channels. I'm going to add it here to color to start. The way you do this is we're going to specify if, and then we're going to say if selection, meaning that if a dot is selected, we are going to have this field field here, view region, and I just added VL filled here. And if it is not selected, we also need to specify that. So we're going to make the value gray if it is not selected. Okay, if I run that, notice when I'm clicking on these, only the ones that are selected are the color of the region that we have here. And note that for this, by default, the input method is click. And with this default input method, if you hold shift, you can click on more than one point, kind of add on points. And then to clear the field, you click somewhere in the background. Now I'm going to also add a conditional selection to this opacity. So as I click these, notice that they're it's still hard to identify the individual one I selected. What I want to do is make all of the rest of them very light gray. The way we'll do this here is again, add an if, and then selection, and then we'll change this to VL value 0.6. And then if not, then we'll make the value something much lighter, 0.1. And then we can now try, and as you can see, it's much, much lighter, the individual points. So that's pretty good. We have an ability to select an individual value by clicking on it. That's interesting. Another way to do this is rather than just specifying a point, we can change this to an interval. Now, if I run this code, rather than selecting on an individual point, I can drag like this and select a whole range of points. Now, this might not be that exciting just yet, but this is the building block of the more complicated interactions that we're going to do. Stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to show you how to use these in addition with other types of interactions to explore some of these outlier values. It's very hard to see here, but if you look closely, there are these little teeny tiny dots, and it might be useful to be able to zoom in and investigate these particular values. And what we've learned today in terms of select is really the foundation for how we might go about creating interactivity in Vega-Lite.